was there, it was in crappy shape, but it was
Says you are recording.
No, that's not what we wanted.
So they had to slow down. And instead of paying attention to portals, we're going to do some option. So I was that.
Perfect.
Mail, whatever you want to do with that. And
There we are. I think we're close enough. We're within the minute, so we'll get started here. Good morning, everyone. I recognize a lot of people. I probably won't remember half of your names yet. I'm terrible with names. Great with numbers, terrible with names. Want to thank our members from the Springfield area for getting us the site here so we can reach out, and we've been trying to do that now for about half a year now, where we're trying to get to different areas within the division, make it easier for people in that area to come to a division meeting. As much as our normal location is centralized to the division, some people just don't want to drive that far and deal with the highways. So we will be on hopefully every other month going to a different part of our division area and trying to get a meet set up. Plus also, hopefully that way we can get some additional layout tours for ones that we don't normally see unless it's convention time. So I want to thank everybody. We've got some exciting stuff. Hopefully we're going to announce today too. We're trying to get the division more active and a bigger forward-facing appearance to people at large. Because again, we want to grow the division. We want to grow the NMRA. So start off with, since we're in Springfield, I've got historic photos, the original Springfield station and the train shed, which is long gone. So I thought that was an appropriate way to open the slide. Okay, so I think everybody's had their coffee and mandatory one donut right at this point. Remember, if it's in your hand, it's just one donut. We're going to do a new segment that we started a couple months ago, which is member project showcase, where we're trying to get all of you guys to send me a couple of pictures for the next meeting with a sentence or two about what you're doing, or if you're at the meeting, just tell us what's going on. Could be work on the layout, could be work on rolling stock, a locomotive, anything that's hobby related that you want to just show the members. And again, we're just trying to get you guys to show us what you're doing and not just have us feeding the information all the time. So please, if you do that, my email's out there, and just send me, like I said, 2 or 3 photos is all I need, and a sentence or two in your email that says, hey, this is what I'm working on, and I'd be happy to put it in the next meeting. We'll go through the division business. There's a few things coming up. We have 2 clinics today. Steve and Don are doing theirs, and we'll cover that quickly. And we'll take our break. Layout tours, we're fortunate that we have actually 5 possible tours today. One of them was the Richardson train station in Holyoke. That one you had to sign up ahead of time, so I don't know if the window's closed at this point for that one. Probably is at this time. But we have 4 other nice layouts. Most of them, furthest one is about 28 miles away, so not too bad, up in Amherst. So not a bad ride this time of day. You're going to pick up some leaf peeping traffic, but otherwise certainly doable. And lastly, we have a couple of new announcements about things that we're doing at the division here that hopefully will bring some added benefit to you, the members. And we'll be glad to take feedback on that or anything else that you would want to see. First up, member showcase. Our social media chair, Mike, has been working on some stuff.
So, like all of you, I buy too many cars. And one of the things that I've been trying to do is, instead of outright just sell new kits, is actually build stuff. And one of the things that's been cool is a lot of these kits go together very well. I mean, and it's not just new kits. The two here, so you have the one on the right is an AccuRail 3-bay hopper that I've had, and I found a really neat photo from 1980 of this car still in service. So that's a neat find because it's still the Burlington red and a very easy car to do weathering wise. So there's a lot of artist acrylics on it. There's some decal work, and that's a cool car. And then the one on the left is actually an old front range kit that I found at Tom's Trains in Connecticut from our last meeting in Wethersfield. And it was only $8, and it came together really well. Again, found photos for it, weathered it, and just really neat to kind of work through some of the cars in my collection instead of actually just kind of buying stuff and then selling it later. And if I end up selling it after, that's fine. But yeah, just a little motivation for you to kind of build a kit. These don't take long. These are, a week's worth of time and some details and some photos. So a little time spent at the workbench and a few less kits in the box.
And Mike, I do promise the third photo was there.
The B&O box car is not there.
Yes,
anymore,
it just disappeared.
Yeah.
Yep, the Virginia and Ohio box car. I don't know why it's not on the view now, but it was definitely in the slide.
For those of you in the room, the B&O box car is over on the table over there if you'd like to see it.
Yes. Yeah, it is here for display. All right, general news. Well, 2023 conventions for the most part are in the books right now. I hope somebody or most of you got a chance to attend one or the other. I know this year I went to the National Air Gauge Convention in Denver, and I was pleased that I had a HON3 caboose that took second place. So that was a nice time. Considering it's popular vote, too, usually the really large scales, the garden stuff is usually what wins because you can just cram so much detail into it. So I'm pretty pleased. 2024 is just around the corner. If you didn't know already, National is going to be in Long Beach, California next year. From what I've heard from National, this is the last of the big conventions for a while. NMRA National is going to try to go to a shorter format and smaller location, picking their sites. The thought there is that, us older people that have vacation time or are retired and have all the time in the world can certainly go to bigger events, and we also generally have more free capital to spend on our vacations. But Long Beach, I know, is not going to be exactly inexpensive. So they're going to be looking at going to second tier cities that can host it. They're going to go with a smaller footprint for the National Train Show and the conventions too. And I think they're going to take it down to only 4 days for the entire thing. So basically National Train Show will probably overlap the convention. So stay tuned for that. I haven't heard where 25 is, but that's going to be the first one. I thought I heard something about possibly Detroit. Yeah. It's not in Detroit. It'll be in one of the suburbs. Novi. Yeah, Novi. Yes. But you'd fly into Detroit if you're flying. Again, the NMRA interchange on Discord. How many of you guys are members on the Discord channel? If you're not, the nice thing about it, as opposed to, say, Facebook or anything, there's no political nonsense or stuff you don't want to see. It's just you just sign up for the NMRA channel. You don't sign up for any other services. So all you're getting is modelers talking about modeling or the NMRA. There are open video chat rooms there, so that if you wanted to have even a BS session with your friends, you could reserve one of the chat rooms there, and you could talk freely, just like basically any type of video, Zoom or anything like that. But since you're within the NMRA, it's only NMRA members that can get in there. So you don't have to worry about, sharing out your credentials for a video meeting and somebody grabbing them and strange things happening during the event. Big thing that we got to start pushing to our membership and what's the value in the NMRA is the partnership program. And if you haven't looked at the list lately, they're always adding to it. If you're a modeler and you buy a few things a year, let's just say, there's a good chance that if you use some of the discounts there, you will pay for your membership in the NMRA for the year with the savings that you'll make off these products. A lot of the vendors, 10%, 15%, 20%. Someone said, I haven't checked it yet, but I think it was Badger. If you go through their site directly, you're getting like 50% off at airbrushes. Yeah, it's a pretty sizable savings for them. And that's just for NMRA membership. So please take advantage of it. When people say, well, it's, the membership is not worth me, renewing my membership. That money you'd save right there. If you're buying equipment or materials, it doesn't matter what it is, you're going to save a lot of money through there. And again, yes. Yeah, Micromark is on there. So if you're buying tools from Micromark, if you get 20% off, especially if you're buying something big. I know I'm buying one of the ultrasonic cutting knives that they have, and they're like $400. So, hey, 20% is a nice savings there. Yep, Tichy's on there, yeah. But again, I'm new to the superintendent role, and I've, again, only started getting really active in the NMRA, even though I've been a member for over 20 years now. I was pretty much lone wolfing while my kids were growing up. They come first, you know how that goes. But again, I want to bring value to this. I believe in Gordy's mission of growing the NMRA and making it viable and attracting new members. So if anybody has any ideas, I don't care how crazy you think it might be, I'd be happy to entertain it, and we'll see what we can do. We'll talk to the board, and if it has merits, we'll try to do something with it. All right. Layout tours. We're always short on layout tours. I think this rotating meetings locations is helping us because we're getting those layouts in that area. When we're around Central Connecticut there, we kind of play out the layouts. You can only do them so often. There hasn't been progress on a layout. But again, contact Don, who's the layout coordinator in the clinic right now, right? You kind of have to take care of the clinic, even though that position is open. If anybody wants to handle clinics, we'd be happy to have somebody else come on board to handle clinic coordination. New shirts. We are working on some new polo shirts. I spoke about at the last meeting, the NMRA is currently going through at the national level a branding program. They want us to basically have a unified look to the general public. I guess it really showed last year at Springfield when we had the national NMRA booth. Nutmeg was there, Hub was there, and the region was there. And we're all in different shirts with different logos, and none of us all are necessarily, we have our division or regional logos, but we don't have NMRA branding in there. So they're trying to come up with unified standards for how you're going to present yourself to the public on apparel like that. So the project's semi-stalled because, it takes forever to turn an aircraft carrier at the national level. They are supposed to have, they promised me that they're going to have out interim logos. I'm going to get on Discord.
They're unofficially out, but
yes.
Lucy says not to use it.
Yes. So apparently until they have the next meeting of the national board, so they get that approved.
Where are you getting that information?
Because she posted it on the Nutmeg, on the NMRA Facebook, and I
Yes.
reshared it.
Yep.
And she said, it's not the new logo, calm down.
Yes.
It's not the new logo yet.
Yes. And again, it's only an interim as far as we know at this point. One of the big things they want is they want us, as part of our branding, is to always fully spell out National Model Railroad Association. Because there's also a National Motor Racing Sports Association and a few others that use the NMRA initials. So they're trying to get away from that confusion. And again, like I said, even though we have our divisional logos that we like to cherish, they want us to look like part of the NMRA. I don't know if it'll get down to color or anything like that. That's way off in the future. But I'm just gonna hold off on the polo shirts right now until we get closer. So even if they're an interim shirt, we're not just spending money needlessly to have it thrown away. They say that the current national logo with the flange wheel icon, that's not going to go away, but they're just going to add text. So they're probably figuring out standards font, what they wanted to say. So that'll still be coming, stand by. Mike and Robert Welk were at the Manchester train show, and that was pretty good. We picked up some emails, talked to several visitors, gave out some handouts. Mike's also going to be at the Vernon train show, and we are planning to either have our own booth or share the duties with National or the region at the Springfield train show. So if anybody has a couple hours that they can help us at one of the tables, we can. There's also a show down in Ansonia, I think it was.
That's November 5th. That's
November 5th. I haven't contacted them yet about getting a table there. I'm not too far from that location, you know, half hour or so, so I may go to that show and represent us there. The next meeting is December 9th. That's our annual holiday party, so there will be food. Bring your appetites. And yeah, that's usually a light meeting. It's usually about eating. We'll hopefully have a few layout tours or something that we can do as well, possibly a clinic or so. And after I announced the clinics there, we've got some new announcements to make from the divisional level. The region and the national. Big thing that came out at the last regional board of directors meeting is that they're light on articles for the Coupler magazine. So if anybody's working on their APs and working towards MMR, you know, you can start getting some points towards Railroad Author by writing some articles for the Coupler. So check the Coupler. I believe it's Mike Carfaro Chris Carfaro is the editor, and just get in touch with him. Could be any format. Could be just a layout tour, you know, brief description of your layout. Could be a building article, short ones. Vehicle, anything like that. So that's one way to go. Also, the region is looking for a social media director. I didn't open my mouth, Mike, because you got enough on your plate right now. Because you're doing an awesome job for us. But yeah, that would go towards your AP for association volunteer if you were doing that, because it's at the regional level.
It counts double if I do both, right?
I believe it does.
Okay.
So yeah, well, that's why I figured I wasn't going to say anything at the meeting. I would just leave it out there. I don't like eating into people's bandwidth for the hobby without them deciding to do it themselves. Like we said already, Nutmeg is planning to either have its own booth. Ron, what was the gist of that last meeting, the planning meeting?
I'll be sending out an email to everybody on the board.
Okay.
Don't want to get into it right now.
Okay, no, that's fine. Is it leaning to we may have our own booth? Or we'll be working with one of the other, either regional or...
Based on a comment from them.
Yep.
Why would we want to have our booth?
Okay.
And they will be doing the same thing.
Okay.
They are going to be totally doing the booth differently.
Okay.
Than last year.
Very good. Yeah, unfortunately, I had to go see the financial planner and Social Security Administration at the time they picked for that meeting, so I couldn't make it, but that's kind of important.
Oh yeah.
Yep. And again, as I already mentioned before, remember to take advantage of the partnership program. You can save a lot of money. All right, communications. Mike, you want to say anything? Because I didn't really change the slide at all.
So we've actually been growing quite a bit on Facebook and Instagram. The new social media manager for National, Lucy Dormont, has been incredibly active, and she's been doing a great job with all the NMRA national stuff. And she's actually been reposting a lot of our things as well, so she's been very good. But as far as division, you know, one of the things that I want to do is highlight our members and what our members are working on. And, you know, you can reach out to me through Facebook or email if you have it, or if not, you can reach out to Ron. You know, our work, what you guys are doing in your own basements and garages, that's really the high, you know, the interesting stuff. And that's how we're going to get people in here. It's kind of what I think what I'm going to call contagious motivation. some of us are more motivated than others, and it kind of rubs off on other people. I know every time I look at Chris's blog, I come home and I start building stuff. So, if we can share that kind of thing through the social media here, it's a really good thing. So if you have anything you're interested in sharing or you'd like to see, you can reach out to me through email or Facebook or any of the social media platforms.
Yeah, I'll second that. When I'm out there and looking at what other modelers are doing, that's what gets the fire in my belly going and gets me back at it. So I'm currently right in the middle of designing the layout now. So I'm one step closer to actually installing benchwork. Yes. All right. Not going to go through the whole list, but here's some of the train shows that are coming up in the next few months. I'm sure we posted out to the division webpage too. So, yeah, so there's really not a lot of reason to go through any of these. Some of the key ones is Springfield is coming up, January 27th, 28th. Should already be able to buy your tickets if I'm not mistaken. So buy in advance. The Hub Division Train Show, December 2nd and 3rd. I've been going up with a group of 3 other Nutmeg members for the last 2 or 3 years now. It's kind of our tradition.
Carpool.
Yep, carpool up and go to the show, and then we go have lunch afterward and some adult beverages. Yeah, so it's a good time to get away. Lions Club in Newtown is also doing a train show. I'm not familiar with this one.
It's a brand new one actually this year.
Yep. Yeah. As far as I know at this point, what used to be the Cheshire Train Show that the band used to put on, I think that's defunct. It stopped after COVID or during COVID, and I think they just are going in a different direction for fundraising. That's unfortunate. So it's nice to see some new events coming up.
Yeah, the instructor and teacher was in charge of that, retired.
Okay. Yep, you got to have somebody that likes trains to, run a train show. Vernon is also coming up here on October 29th.
One note, if anyone listens to the Around the Layout podcast, Ray Arnott had Dave Owens on for a short episode this past week covering this, and he does an excellent job diving into what's going to be there.
Yes. And I did listen to that one too, and this is another new train show, again, that's springing up to replace what Cheshire used to be. So we have to support these new ones. Let's see, Worcester's Model Railroaders is having their open house. It's today. That's an even longer ride. Yeah, it's right now. So I don't think we're going to get there. Why is Vernon in there? What are we into now? We're into a loop. There we go. All right. This is in Hudson, Mass. Holiday Toy Training. All right. So the clinics today. First presenter is going to be Steve Meyer, who did a great job last meeting too, I believe, right? Yep. And he's doing New Haven Waybills, and it reveals transportation details. This is something that will have interest for me, even though I'm not a New Haven guy, but again, looking at those waybills and trying to figure out where traffic was going is good if you're operations based for your layout. You want to be able to make sense of where your cars or loads and empties are going. And then we're going to have Don Weigt doing soldering basics for electrical and light mechanical uses. And our layouts, it's Bill Duffy, I believe, and Ken Harstein. On the front media card up here, we do have the addresses for each of the layouts. If you don't want to use a smartphone to get your GPS driving, Don also has turn-by-turn sheets up here with the directions to each of the layouts. And the other two are Lynn Clocks and Steve Graham. Now, the only thing I know about Steve Graham's, which I'm kind of interested in, is a live steamer one. It's 7 1/4 inch gauge, so it's outdoors. Apparently, the Amherst Railroad Society got this, how they get equipment and they have sales. Well, apparently all this large scale stuff was there, given to Amherst to dispose of. And I guess Steve decided that he would snatch it all up and build it.
lot more complicated than that, yeah.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. But I was just very interested that, like, wow, this stuff actually made it through Amherst and came to market that way. That was just really novel. I'm sure it was complicated. Just moving all that stuff would be a lot more complicated. All right, so the first announcement we have is from our Treasurer Secretary, James Mayo, and we're looking to start an operations pool within the division. So if you're a layout owner and you're looking for operators, or you're welcoming in guest operators from time to time, or if you're someone who's into operations as an end user, or if you'd like to get into operations and you're new. I've only operated a few times. I've had a great time. My layout's definitely going to be operations based, so I've got lots to learn yet. We're going to set up something similar to, I believe it's operating-sessions.org.
Yes.
Which is a national.
It'll actually be in the division.
Right, within the division. Why don't you come up and speak so that the recording will hear you too, James.
Oh, okay.
Right, yeah, this operating session, that clearinghouse, yeah, it's like, I am not gonna go to make it to Fort Wayne, Indiana on a Tuesday. Right.
Exactly. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't apply to us locally.
And seeing that not everybody has, the retirement schedule where they can take off any time. I want to make this a Saturday operating sessions, whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening, but Saturdays. So anybody can make it. I'm going to be coming up with the rules of conduct and for the participants and the owners, and clearly state the rules and guidelines that how these are going to be assigned. So you're going to be given a number, and however many slots each railroad can hold, I'll start off with that number and fill them and go down the list. So it'll be on a rotational basis, because not everybody's railroad is large enough to where you can announce it and it's a cattle call. Everybody just shows up and you'll have something to run. Most railroads are not like that. So I'm going to be running this. There's the contact is going to be through this email, Nutmeg Division Operations @gmail. And so that way, personal information isn't given, but the clearinghouse is here. So if you have a railroad and get other operators, Saturdays, this is it. Or if you want to work on your chief dispatcher, you have to run a whole snotload of jobs. And seems like the hardest one I thought was yardmaster. Hardest one is yardmaster. If you work on different railroads, get signed off, great way to do it. But I'd want to get the rules done by the next board meeting. Start collecting the information, hopefully by the end of the year, and go active for off sessions after Springfield. So if we can start in Springfield. The way it's going to be set up, going through the email, the railroads are going to have to start, pick operating sessions 30 to 45 days in advance, because the screening for the operators might take that long. But that's the only downside I can see that it's not like where other people have operating sessions and say, hey, I'm having an operating session next week. Who wants to go? Right? Yeah, not everybody can work on that much of a short notice. So we're going to give it a try. Thank you. Oh, and next year's regional convention.
Yes.
Lakeshore's Division, Rochester, New York.
Okay, cool. Rochester.
Excellent.
Thank you for that. All right. Glad we were able to straighten that out. I had heard rumors that it was Lakeshore's. I just didn't know for sure. I was hoping for the confirmation on that. And lastly, another announcement from Mike.
Okay. So in the interest of doing different things, one of the things that I see a lot on social media is a lot of regions and divisions do regular or semi-regular modeling contests. And they're usually very simple along the lines of bring in something you've already built that fits this criteria. So, you know, flat car load, small structure, something like that. I don't know about you guys, I tend to keep a lot of these plastic food containers for paint and like plaster and other things. And it occurred to me that, you know, we could do a kind of a neat little modeling contest. The idea is, before I get into the rules, is this is not supposed to be an in-depth contest. There will not be points judged. It's just going to be a popular vote. So the topic for this one is along the line, and the only three rules, don't read into them, don't make any more rules on your own. Those are the only three rules. You must use a plastic recycled food container. You must have at least one piece of track and one other railroad-related item. You can see from those three rules, there's a lot of space here. The idea with this is that it's just something you can do in a night or two for, you know, maybe an hour. If for those of you in the room, you can see Chris brought a little display thing, like nothing bigger than that. Something simple that you can literally do at your workbench when you've got modeler's block on your layout or something like that. The idea is to try and get more people to our April 2024 meeting, which is actually the annual meeting when we have our election. So this is maybe a little inexpensive way to get more people to attend and attend the vote. We are going to pick the winner from all the entries present by popular vote. So everyone who shows up will get one vote. Only the entrants in the building will count, and we'll pick from those, and however many we have, we'll have a first place. We'll probably, I guess I haven't gotten formal approval for this, but the winner gets a digital gift card to walters.com. So will probably be $50 or something like that.
That'll be discussed in the next board meeting.
Yeah.
How much do you want to throw in, but yes.
Something like that.
I don't see that being a big problem.
So
yeah, there will be a reward for putting the effort in.
Yeah.
So, again, when Mike proposed it to me, I thought it was a fantastic idea. If any of you people purchase items from Mini Prints from Bernard Helen up in Canada, he does a similar contest. He called it the peanut butter jar lid contest, and you didn't even have to. Well, I think you required to use one mini print in the model, but other than that, do whatever you want, any scale, anything. So you know, if you wanted to do a FN3, you know, figure of, you know, a brakeman or something holding up a lantern and whatever else you want to do the scene, go for it. So again, the same thing is, yeah, the footprint should roughly be the size of the container or lid that you're using. And no, I think it's a great idea. And again,
there's a lot of creative freedom here. So it's, again, it's not meant to be, this is not a T-track module. This is not an N-track module. It's, you know, something very inexpensive. For those of you in the room, the yellow pages on the table in the back there, these are the handout. I'm also going to be posting this on our Facebook and Instagram and all that. So that'll all be out there for you to find. Thank you.
Yep. Any questions for Mike about this little contest we're going to run? And we may try to do this. We'll see how the first one's received, but we may do it like every other meeting, possibly. Maybe on our traveling meetings too, so we can get local people. Yeah, once or twice a year or something like that. We don't know what the frequency will be yet, but we'd like to make it a regular event. And again, to bring modelers in, you know, some of you, if your layouts are at that magical 99, or I'll just say 99% completed, you're not getting a lot of time to stretch your modeling legs anymore. So it's a nice way to sit down and do some scenery again, or build a car or something like that. Or even a detail piece that maybe will end up on your layout when you're done, just another piece of detail to add into a finished layout. Again, it's giving you something else to do that's on a more laid back approach. So that's all we really have for announcements, so we'll take a quick break. We'll get set up. Yes, Don.
I hope I'm not messing up here, but I saw in the latest NMRA magazine that Ron Pelletier got volunteer AP certificate.
Yes, no, that is a good one.
Look at all the stuff Ron brings to all the meetings. I'm
Yes.
surprised he doesn't have it 4 times over.
Yeah,
Congratulations, Ron, and thank you.
yes. And again, I don't know if the video picked that up, but yes, Ron got his volunteer AP certificate for all the hard work he does for the division, the region. Yeah, it's invaluable. Ron carries a lot of load on himself very readily, happily, and never complains about it. And yeah, it's well, we'll make it look good, Ron, at least. Yeah, we don't hear it, la la la, not listening. So yeah,
It says that you can call me any evening.
That's right. On his emails, he does say that. And I can remember when I wasn't very active in the division, I would get calls from Ron wishing me a happy birthday every year. We'd only talk for a minute or two because just at that time life was just really busy for me and I didn't have a lot to contribute. But now that things are opening up, I'm stepping back in. And again, social media is a big part of that. I think that's what's really going to grow the hobby, especially with younger people, is that, we got to get out there on social media showing even short video clips of, just a train running across your layout or something like that, and show people that this is what we're really doing. We're not a bunch of, old people sitting in a room talking about stuff. We actually do some modeling from time to time. So, yep, we'll take a quick break and we'll get going again shortly.
And if you haven't signed in, please sign in.
Okay, recording has started finally. The technical difficulties are astounding sometimes, but anyway, ready to get this thing going. I wanted to preface my presentation with information that I do not intend to be a waybill expert or an operations expert. It's completely separate to what my main interest is in the modeling field, but I did delve into it a little bit. I had a whole bunch of paperwork that I came by some years ago. I don't know whoever gave it to me, but I'd wait around, I'd look at it every so often, and all of a sudden I realized, wow, there's a lot of good information here. So we're gonna go and see some of the details that I found on waybills and other types of paperwork, primarily for the New Haven Railroad, but there are a few other items that we can look at from other railroads also. So the New Haven, like any railroad, they have a lot of freight to move, and it always takes paperwork, no matter what you're doing, a lot of paper. Some years ago, I came by a big pile of paperwork. I had train brands. I had postcards that were sent to freight agents. I had waybill statements. Waybill statement is similar, but not exactly the same as a waybill as far as I can tell. So there's always a lot of interesting information, but I wasn't sure what it all meant. So I did some digging into books and online sources for information. And here's kind of where it starts right here. The shipper is the company or person that has goods to move. Consignee, the company or person receiving the goods. Point of origin is where the shipper is located. Reporting marks, those are found on the freight cars themselves. The routing is indicated, and I found probably the routing to be the most interesting part of the information that you find on these kind of documents. Right here is the routing, and it's all abbreviated, but even for a layman like myself, if you do some digging, you can figure it all out. For the professionals who did this on a daily basis, it was a matter of fact, and they could use all the shortcuts necessary just to get the stuff done. All railroads had specific paperwork that they used, and on the New Haven, the waybill statement is just a little bit different from the actual waybill, but I understand when the paperwork was put together, a lot of times there were 4 or 5 carbons, and the top carbon, top original might have been the waybill, the next carbon down might have been the waybill statement. A lot of similarity in the forms, but they all have their own specific purpose. So the process of moving goods starts with the waybill. Actually, it starts with the shipper filling out a bill of lading or a shipping order. And this is a multiple copy document. Generally, the yellow copy became the original waybill, and other copies went to billing clerks and office personnel. The waybill was an important piece of paper that went along with the movement of the car. The conductor held the waybill when the car was part of a train. The yardmaster then would get the waybill when the car was stopped in his yard. And the station agent finally would have the waybill in his possession when the car was delivered to where the consignee was located. When the car arrived at its destination, there was more paperwork to deal with. There was an arrival notice, the one on the left-hand side here. I don't know if you can read it, possibly not, but it's interesting in that it says 400 sacks of cottonseed meal shipped from Bishopville, South Carolina, consigned to order of L.B. Lovett, care of Apothecaries Hall, and this was sent by one New Haven district traffic agent to the local agent in Granby, Connecticut. And this information is right in here, again, if you can read it. And I did find out that cottonseed meal was used as a fertilizer, pretty much specifically for tobacco crops. The form on the right-hand side is the delivery receipt, and this one indicates that the car was signed off, the load was taken from the car. And this one is interesting because it says that there was a shipment, 26 cartons of greeting cards, if you can read it right here. 26 cartons of greeting cards sent from Wellsville, New York by the Hallmark Card Company, and it was sent to James Cornwell, and it's just addressed to Thompsonville, Connecticut. So I assume here what happened was the shipment showed up, they informed the consignee, and he came and took it from the freight agent in Thompsonville. It's probably impossible to see, but right here, it was indicated by the person taking delivery that they were one carton short. So it shows 26 cartons on the paperwork, and 25 showed up. I don't know how they figured that out, resolved it, but I'm sure they did. So let's look into one example here and a lot of the details. Thompsonville was the freight agency where an awful lot of lumber went in and out of. The main lumber yard was Enfield Lumber. It went by apparently different names than just Enfield Lumber, but that always seems to show up. I'm fairly certain that Enfield Lumber had their own siding, although I didn't really dig to find a track arrangement. But if anyone knows about lumber yards of old, they just about always had their own siding because they had so much coming in. The details here mention that the is a carload of Western spruce lumber. CL means carload. We have the weights, gross weight, the tare weight, the lading weight, the rate that was charged, and we finally have the total charge for the car movement. This one is indicated coming from Grimshaw, Alberta, Canada, all the way to Enfield or Thompsonville, actually. And the routing again is shown with these initials right up here. I decided to decipher the initials, and some of it was a little bit difficult, but not all of it. So I can't show the actual origination of the shipment on this map. You'll see it on the next one. But NAR is Northern Alberta Railway. And that's way up there, like, honestly, almost up to the Arctic Circle. And that's about where this shipment started. So, again, using just the abbreviations that are shown on that waybill, we have NAR, and then CN, Canadian National. FF, here you have to do a little detective work, but FF stands for Fort Francis, which is an interchange point. Then we go to DWP, Duluth, Winnipeg, and Pacific, CNW, Chicago, Northwestern. Here we take a short trip, apparently, on Chicago, South Shore, and South Bend, then to the Nickel Plate, finally to the Erie-Lackawanna. And it's not indicated here that, obviously, when we get to the Erie-Lackawanna, it goes to Maybrook, New York, and the interchange then is to the New Haven. I guess everybody knows that, so they just kind of left it off. I did want to find out exactly what the Northern Alberta Railway was all about, so I found a map, and here, if you look at the red dot up on the top, this is Grimshaw. Like I said, I swear this is the Arctic Circle right here, but it's way up there. That's where the load starts at a lumber mill. It goes all the way down on the Northern Alberta down to Edmonton, and there it transfers over to the Canadian National. Here from Edmonton, it travels a pretty long distance across the Canadian National. Main city that it goes through right here is Winnipeg. Drops all the way down here. This red dot is what's apparently a rather large interchange point, Fort Francis. Never heard of the place until I did some research. Here again is Fort Francis up here. Now we get on the Duluth, Winnipeg, and Pacific, down to Duluth. From Duluth on the Chicago Northwestern, down to Chicago. From Chicago, like I said, there was a short distance on the South Bend. Maybe that was just the preferred way to get out of Chicago. Certainly didn't go very far. South Bend only went to Michigan City, and I think there was also an interchange in Hammond, which is not shown on this map. Then off to the Nickel Plate, all the way over to Buffalo. From Buffalo on the Erie, or at the time Erie-Lackawanna. This dot here is Maybrook. Finally then, we get to Maybrook. Here's the connection shows in the fine print, Erie Railroad coming into Maybrook. And most of us are familiar with this kind of a map, how the traffic would travel from Maybrook, in this case, all the way up the Springfield line. Here's Thompsonville, right here. So that was our final destination for that shipment. There's another similar shipment, again, going to Enfield Lumber. We had a lot of paperwork for that place. They must have really been moving the lumber in and out. So here's a shipment now, carload, CL, of fir plywood. The weights, the rates, again, about $1,500 for a car. The car is Great Northern. You'll see that listed over here. I tried to find freight car photos, and I just didn't have a lot of luck without spending an inordinate amount of time going down to the Great Northern Historical Society and digging. But anyway, rest assured, these are all box cars because that's how the stuff moved back in. All these waybills are from the 1960s. When I traced this out on the map, I realized that the eastern part was pretty much the same as what we saw in the last shipment. No surprises there. But when I saw where the shipment was starting, OE and Will, I said, what exactly is that? Had to do some digging on that one. It starts way back in near Portland, Oregon. I did recognize OE as being Oregon Electric, and that was, I don't know when it was de-electrified, but apparently they kept the name for operating purposes. It was a subsidiary of Southern Pacific. This shows that even the auspices, Portland, Eugene, and Eastern, so there's a lot of confusion with a lot of operating companies there. But I was able to determine, because the paperwork showed the load starting down here in Albany. So here's Albany, Oregon, and that's further down this line right here. So the load started in Albany, worked its way up, and sure enough, Willsburg Junction. I said, oh my goodness, I'm really getting lucky doing this stuff. Because here, this is the interchange point between the Oregon Electric and Seattle, Portland, and Spokane, going right out here. So when the paperwork says OE, Will, that's all the railroaders need to know. They know exactly what's going on. So that's kind of interesting information to find out. So here's our final shipment from Enfield Lumber. Everything is still pretty much the same. We're starting off in Eugene, Oregon, over here. We still have a freight car. This time it's Southern Pacific. Again, a box car. This one is interesting because if you look at the routing, I said, oh my goodness, there's a lot going on here. Check this out. So let's see what this turns into. This is the route that the car took, and I understand that when you are the originating shipper, you are allowed to keep the car on your home rails as long as, I would say, reasonably possible. So that's what we see here. We're starting in Eugene, Oregon. We're going all the way on the Southern Pacific, as it says, San Antonio, Texas. So here we are. Then we have to finally hand it off, and we start going through this real hodgepodge of different railroads and terminology. MP heading north, Missouri Pacific to Fort Worth. T&P, Texas and Pacific, then D and PS. So that one threw me off. I really had to dig for that one. That's the Denison, Pacific, and Suburban. And for some reason, that pops out as being a routing that the freight people need to know about. So that's what that one is. I don't even know if it actually has trackage or is just some means of routing freight for the paperwork. KOG then is Kansas, Oklahoma, and Gulf. Back on to Missouri Pacific. KC means Kansas City. And as you read through these, you have to kind of be flexible. Sometimes they talk about the railroad, sometimes they talk about the interchange points. Mike?
I think the thing that's jumping out to me is, I forget the time, I didn't see it, but, a lot of these are probably subsidiaries or predecessor roads, because you have Texas Pacific was a subsidiary of Missouri Pacific. So, and then you have CGW, which is a predecessor to Chicago and Northwestern. So these are probably shortcuts, or however you'd like to call them, across, rather than kind of belonging out.
Fort Worth, I think, is part of that.
Yeah.
Fort Worth, PNC,
Because you start on Missouri Pacific in San Antonio, but you end up back on it, so in between is probably Missouri Pacific subsidiaries.
Yeah. It's kind of convoluted, but again, the professionals doing this every day, they knew exactly how they wanted to route cars.
This I believe this is back when you do this for, you would go out of your way to save a few cents if there's
Very likely, yes. Well, this is indicative, and I can't say exactly for any of the paperwork we have, but very often it would take a full month for a car to get from one coast to the other. So anyway, this journey then of our boxcar goes to Chicago Great Western, goes to Peoria, CNNW, then connects in Chicago. They don't mention Chicago. I guess it's obvious to everybody. Onto the B&O. B&O then went to Cumberland or Hagerstown or someplace, I'm not sure exactly. Onto the Western Maryland then to the Reading to the Central New Jersey to the Lehigh and Hudson River, and then finally to Maybrook and the New Haven. So that's quite the trip, just for a carload of plywood. Now this is one of the originating documents that I had in my stack. This is the document where a shipping order starts. This is the shipping order, also called the bill of lading. This one is originated by Bigelow Sanford, who was one of the United States' largest carpet manufacturers for a very long time. Certainly they were during the 60s, and they sent out a lot of carpet around the U.S. This one's interesting because the load is indicated to be rolls, cartons, and bales of carpeting. I don't know how you get a carton or a bale of carpeting, but if you look at the details here, according to the lines they're put on. So to make our accounting easy, we just added them up. We have 68 items. We'll call them bales. Again, this was all moved in a boxcar. There's a lot of stuff here I was not able to figure out. I don't know if these were bale numbers. Perhaps they were, but there's a lot of gobbledygook on here. But the important thing with this shipment is right here, and this is interesting because this says this car will make 2 stops. In Richmond, California. That's on the east side of San Francisco Bay. Then it's also going to San Francisco itself on the west side of San Francisco Bay. We have 5 bales unloaded, as you can see. Right here, here's the bales. 5 bales with those numbers, so when someone goes into that boxcar, they better find those 5 bales. Those are unloaded in Richmond. The remainder, all of these bales, plus 2 more cartons, all go to San Francisco. Now, like I said, this is the originating document, the shipping order, and this is prepared by the shipping people at Bigelow Sanford. And this is filled out completely and given to the New Haven Railroad and say, hey, we have a full boxcar, come pick it up, here's where we want it to go. And you can see here that they've even put the seals, okay? This boxcar is totally sealed up, here's the numbers. So this thing is sitting on the siding at Bigelow Sanford, which is right in the Thompsonville station area, and it's ready to go. This is the paperwork that the New Haven agent right there in Thompsonville will receive and say, okay, let's make this happen. It's also interesting if you read the details down here about when the car gets to San Francisco. You can see it says unload car from brake end to left side, and this is the part right here, the stop off. It says stop off car for partial unloading at Bigelow Sanford in San Francisco. And so it's just a little bit confusing because the way the terminology is, it would seem to indicate that the car is first going to San Francisco and then coming back to Richmond. I don't know that that's the case, because here it is traveling on the Santa Fe, coming over to Richmond, okay? Then here's San Francisco Bay, where the car goes across on the ferry.
The Santa Fe ran a car ferry.
Right.
San Francisco. They're switching in San Francisco.
But I don't know, I can't tell by the paperwork which stop was made first. You know, it would seem to indicate, because it says stop off car for partial unloading. It would almost seem that it took the ferry across to San Francisco and then came back. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, you were on Santa Fe.
So here's the details. Here's the all of this area out here is the water. Here's the indication of the Santa Fe ferry coming in from Port Richmond. Comes over here to the pier. Okay. The blue is the State Belt Railroad in San Francisco that did all of the switching up and down the row of piers, the Embarcadero, etc. So it would go by the State Belt, and then it would come over here, and if you look real carefully, sure enough, there's Bryant Street, which is the address that we saw. Here's the foot of Bryant Street, and there are some tracks indicated, and here it even says Santa Fe Railroad Yard right here. So that's
you see the car ferry, like it kind of dropped there, and then came back around the China Basin there, and that's the connection, probably.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
because the Santa Fe ferry, the Santa Fe's main slip was down there, on that, where you see that traffic.
Oh, okay. You're right. I didn't even notice this. It may have come in here, yes. It's very possible. Yeah. Very possible. So again, back to the address. It was noted on the shipping order going to number 2 Bryant Street, and I did some digging and found out that this building, 2 Bryant Street, was built in '37. As I was checking the book, okay, this is Pier 28, and it's even indicated in some of the paperwork that Bigelow Sanford building was near Pier 28. And I said, well, does this place still exist? It sure does. There it is. And it's pretty obvious. There's no guessing here, because if you can see in great big lettering, number 2 Bryant Street. So it doesn't look like much of a warehouse to take, full carloads of carpeting coming in. Perhaps it was larger. We'll have to admit, perhaps there was more to it at the time. But
Dave, I believe the Thompsonville building also still exists. It's apartments now.
yes.
Oh, in entire South of Market is department.
Yeah, yeah.
Used to be all industrial, it's now all.
Yeah.
Everything's moved off of there, any bridge there.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
All there.
Interesting, okay. So anyway, that,
Few industrial buildings.
here's one that's quite interesting. I had a friend who's into old cars and even specifically old Ramblers help me with this one. Ramblers sent from the factory in Kenosha to Economy Rambler. There's no specific address, but it's obviously in Enfield or Thompsonville. And the interesting part is, again, the routing. Okay, up here, we're going Chicago Northwestern to Chicago, B&O, Western Maryland, Reading, Central New Jersey, Lehigh and Hudson River, and for some reason they list New Haven as the delivering railroad in this case. What's interesting about the shipment is that they have the actual serial numbers and model descriptions of the cars. These were 1960 model cars, which is revealed by the model numbers here. They all start with 60. But anyway, there were a number of different cars there, from the two-door little club car that a lot of us remember, the little toy Rambler, to a V8 Ambassador, and one of those also was a station wagon. So on this one we had information about the conveyance that was used to move the cars, and I was able to find substantial information on this. Chicago and Northwestern was the delivering car. This one is very similar. It's in automobile service, and the giveaway, of course, is the two doors, and also automobile service cars had a white stripe put on the door. Of course, the question is just how do you get 4 Ramblers or 4 of any automobile into a car like this? And I said, well, let's see what's going on. I looked for automobile transport, and I said, I don't think this is the way they do it. This doesn't look exactly right. And you know, here apparently they had some fenders get in the way, and okay, we'll just take the fenders off, and when it gets to a destination, they'll put them back on. That was probably pretty common. This is back in the 30s. If we move forward to the 60s, though, the trick was to use the Evans auto rack, and here we had 4 cars fit into a boxcar, 2 in each half, 2 in each end, and one had to be elevated up on the structural steel components that were permanently fitted out to automobile boxcars. And so this worked out quite well, and all you ever had to do was make sure that you had a platform when you were receiving these. And when I pulled up an old map, I couldn't find anything newer, but this one, which is really quite ancient, if you look right here, that's very obviously a platform. And if we assume that there's a ramp on one end, then these Ramblers were able to be received in Thompsonville, unloaded from the boxcar, driven down the ramp, and driven off to the dealership. Here's another interesting one. Again, this is where it all starts. This is the bill of lading. This was prepared by Eastern States Farmers Exchange shipping agent in Ohio, and this designates a carload of feed and grain being delivered to Walter Simmons in Granby, Connecticut. And the routing, nickel plate, Delaware, Lackawanna and Western, Lehigh, Hudson River, New Haven. And the car is ERDX. So this is very typical of the car that would have been used. I don't think too many of us have ever seen these kind of cars, at least not on our layouts, but they are available, and I understood there was a rather large fleet of these cars out there. Yeah, it's interesting that, well, they actually are refrigerator cars, although I don't believe that they were refrigerated. Insulated, yes. So that's interesting to think that this type of car came, you know, not too far from us, up the track to Granby, Connecticut, back in the 60s. Here's a bonus. We'll go offline of the New Haven. This one I came by, and it was just too interesting not to include it. This is a shipment on the CNNW and also the Chesapeake and Ohio. It's going from Pittsburgh plate glass, going to Pittsburgh plate glass, linseed oil. It's going in a 3-compartment tank car. Now, these are the things that probably everybody who ever had Lionel trains probably had 3 or 4 of these. Certainly not as common as the single dome tank cars, but here's good proof of exactly how this is used. This is going from Red Wing, Minnesota, and the instructions are interesting. It says unload compartments A and B in Milwaukee. Here you have to read between the lines, because right here, if you see Chicago Northwestern, okay, where it originates in Red Wing, here when it says Milwaukee, that means Milwaukee town, Milwaukee city. That's not the Milwaukee Railroad. So it goes to Milwaukee, and then CO is Chesapeake and Ohio. So if you do a little detective work, you find out, oh, Chesapeake and Ohio is like on the other side of Lake Michigan. I guess we're getting on the car ferry, and sure enough, that is how it works, because that's the location of Grand Rapids, Michigan, is on the other side. So here's the route that the car takes. Starts at the Pittsburgh plate glass Red Wing plant, and I assume that's where they make the linseed oil. Goes all the way down on the Chicago Northwestern, down to Milwaukee. Here, compartments A and B were unloaded. It didn't say on the paperwork exactly where this place was located. I guess the railroad people knew, and it didn't have to be stated. And then we get on the car ferry, go across the lake, get on the Chesapeake and Ohio over here, and then finally down to Grand Rapids. And there's the CNO's City of Midland. And this is similar, but not exactly the same as the car that was used. But if you've not paid close attention to a photo like this, this is instructive, because you can see very clearly there's rows of rivets, okay? And so, you know, each one of these is a completely separate compartment with domed ends. It's all put together as a single unit. And what's important is, up on the top, A, B, and C, so that when it arrives someplace or when it's being filled up, everybody knows exactly what goes where. And this car was listed, again, not the one that we're looking at, but most likely very close. 6,500 gallons, which is not a lot, but substantial anyway. So we have to remember that the work is never done until all the paperwork is finished, and the people that really deserve the credit for moving the freight around on the railroads in the U.S. are the station agents, the yard masters, and the conductors. As we see, the paperwork is essential, and there's always mountains and mountains of paperwork to move railroad cars. Professionals determine the best and most efficient routings for these cars, and you can apply some of the details and some of the particulars that you've seen here, perhaps to your own operations. There's a lot of versatility instead of just running cars from one place to the other. Think about all the variations that you could employ on your own. So that ends Waybill Trivia, and I hope you learned something new in the process, and thank you for attending. Any questions?
More of a comment.
Yeah.
I have a few Waybills of my own, and like you found it, it's interesting to me to see the routing that goes. You would think it's you'd want to go two quick point, straight line between points, but you go over all these circuits. It's very much a circuit with a lot of ways. There are a lot of them, and this is not uncommon to you would think of.
Yeah. It's not obvious until you actually connect the dots. If you have the actual waybill and you connect the dots, sometimes it's quite amazing the routes that the cars take.
You wouldn't think of something from northern Alberta, Enfield,
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be nice. I really appreciate you showing that the cars could be double unloaded. Well, that's true. That was like, I've always thought of way cars, like lesser cars I bought doing that sort of service where they would go from place to place.
Yes, yeah.
I did not know, I guess I could have guessed, but I hadn't seen the other that were unloaded when partially unloaded and then fully unloaded later.
I don't think I ever thought of it myself either. I always figured, well, we've got 3 separate compartments, and I just stopped it there. But to see that 2 compartments go here, and then the third compartment goes, another 50 miles away, that's
Really
interesting.
interesting to try and emulate on a model railroad, because then you have the opportunity to actually typically run a car from place to place without having to fully unload and reload it.
Right, yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah, a lot to be learned in these waybill details, really. Yeah. All right.
All right, okay, we're live. Okay, I'm Don Weigt. I'm going to talk briefly about soldering. We're running late here. I'm only going to be able to do a few minutes. There are handouts that Al has passed around. Anybody who wants one is welcome to it, and we could post this on the website later for anybody who loses it or wants another one, and for people who are watching at home. Soldering is not quite the same as gluing, because gluing basically something penetrates like into wood grain or something preferably, or you roughen the surface and it gets around those imperfections and it grabs. Soldering is a chemical bond happening between the metal you're soldering to and the solder. And so if you have can't just drop molten solder on something and have it stick. You have to heat the metal up enough for the bond to form. And that's typically about 100 degrees Fahrenheit, hotter than the melting point of the solder. So for most soldering work, a 700 or 800 degree tip iron works pretty well. And this is what I do the majority of my work with. This is a old Weller iron that's temperature controlled. It has a magnetic tip that loses its magnetism when it gets to the set temperature, and it actually toggles a little switch in here that connects and disconnects the heating element to regulate the temperature. Long-lasting tips, well, let's see, the solder is almost always a lot of tin. The old solders were, the other majority metal was lead, and lead is inexpensive and it's easy to work with, but as we now know, it's sort of poisonous, and it's also pretty soft. It's not the world's best electrical conductor, but in short, thick segments, it's plenty good. So it was used until about 20 years ago when the Europeans said, you ain't going to sell lead in electronics here anymore, and they're a big enough market, they drove the entire world to switch to what's called RoHS, which is not reduction, but it's, anyway, it's something about reduction of hazardous materials, but it's not, the word's not reduction. But anyway, because of that, solders have changed. They no longer have lead in them, although you can still buy it that way. But this is an old roll. This is lead. Newer ones are mostly tin and a little silver, so they cost a little more. They're harder. They don't make quite as pretty a joint, but they're actually stronger and probably better electrical conductors. If you use the old lead-bearing solders, you should wash your hands carefully when you finish, especially before handling food. Irons, you need 6 to 700, well, 6 is kind of low, 700 to 800 degrees. 700 is fine for most electrical soldering. Sometimes 800 is a little handier if you need a little extra heat, but if you need a lot of heat for a big joint, you don't really need higher temperature. You need a bigger tip to transfer more heat. And people have trouble soldering because they're trying to solder incompatible materials, or they don't have the surface clean. You have to not have oxide, you have to have bare, real metal there. Oxide layers won't stick, and unless the flux is strong enough to break them down to get you back to bare metal, they won't solder. And so a big part of getting a good joint is cleaning the metal down to where it's shiny metal, and then making the solder joint before it has a chance to corrode and tarnish. And let's see, fluxes are things that keep oxygen away while you're heating the metal until you can make a joint. And most electronic solders at least come with fluxes in the solder, actually in kind of little lines. I'm not sure how they make it, but when you melt the solder, you get some flux, some resin coming out first. It wets the work, covers it up, keeps the oxygen away, and then as it heats up, the solder will flow onto it and bond. You do not just take a glob of wet solder and like you could with glue, touch it on something and it's going to stick. You have to heat the metal you're soldering to. And the tip itself may not actually make enough contact through the little tiny spot that touches to heat the metal enough for the joint. So you need the tip to have solder on it for the purpose of filling the space around the tip to increase the size of the cross-section of the heat transferring material to get the work hot enough. And then you feed the solder in against the work, not against the iron, and it'll melt and give you a nice joint. And I wish I had time to demonstrate this, but we have to be out of here in 7 minutes, so I can't. I will do the rest of this at the next meeting if that's amenable to the board. Do look this handout over if you want. I hope it helps. I wanted to talk about stripping and soldering. You know, they talk about making hooks and hooking wires together to make solder joints. I don't do that. I just lay the two wires side by side. If they've been pre-coated with solder, which we call tinning, you just heat the thing up and those tin leads of solder will flow together and you get a nice joint. I had some to pass around, but it's probably not going to be. Anyway, I had a couple samples here.
We'll give it a try now.
Of things that I had soldered. Feeders onto rails, you can solder the side of the rail, you know, is sort of cup shaped because you have the flat base and you have the rail head, and in between you have this narrower web. I just put the iron in basically between the base and the web and heat down there and then flow the solder in. So there's an example there with some feeders. I like for stripping a simple tool like this. Now you can get fancy ones that have notches in here for different sizes of wire. I don't particularly like them. This one has a stop you can adjust in the handle to set how far it closes. I just move it out of the way. You know, if you're starting out, it's handy to have stops and guides and stuff. But okay, here's the, I'm not going to show very well. Here's two wires I just soldered together, they're not twisted. They're just soldered, just tin, each one separately. Tinning is a process of heating it up and applying solder and getting it coated. And that's not just a gob here and there, it should flow around it and encapsulate things pretty completely. And then they just flow together. Now, if I had left a little more space here, separated, I could have slipped heat shrink on the side that's separated farther. This is more stubborn than usual. Of course. Anyway, if you had a little more clear like this, you can slip heat shrink on first, then solder the joint, slide the heat shrink on so it's across the joint, shrink it down, and then you can pull these back together and twist them if you want. But I was going to show you, to strip wires, you can feel the difference of resistance between the plastic and the metal. So I just squeeze it. Now, the other thing I want to show you is the length I usually strip is equal to one of these pieces of metal plus that again. So basically it's the thickness of the two pieces of metal. So you need it sticking out about as much as the thickness of the jaw, one jaw or the other. And then just squeeze it till you feel the insulation yield, and ta-da, you have, it's hard to see, but there it is. And that's all I do. The first couple times you might squeeze a little too hard and cut something off, so it's good to have a little extra length, and you can do it again if you wreck the first one. But with a little practice, you know, it's a quick process. So, and there they are ready for tinning and soldering. Main thing is you have to have bare metal, you have to have suitable metals. You know, if you're trying to solder cast iron or aluminum, you're in trouble. For mechanical things, you can use music wires, you know, piano wire from the hobby shop for linkages and things. And for that, it's okay to use a plumber's kind of flux that's more acidic. This is not something to use on electrical work. This I got, I think, at Lowe's. This is the same kind of rosin flux that is in the solder for electrical work. You can buy this separately, but you might have to mail order it from somebody like DigiKey. And I think that's really all we have time for. But you need bare metal, you need appropriate solder, you need enough flux and enough heat, and you're good. And so for mechanical stuff, sometimes I use a gun because you can't get enough heat out of the iron tip unless you have a big iron tip, and I didn't. And I would have had to mail order the tip, and I could go to Lowe's and get the gun. So I was in a hurry. It's handy for tools as well as for mechanical assemblies. I have someplace here some tape. I had a drill bit, 1/32 inch. I make bearings for switch machine linkages that use 1/32 wire for the torsion rod. Well, I couldn't grip the 1/32 bit in my chuck. So what I did is I slipped it inside of 2 pieces of telescopic brass tubing. So it's 1/32 up to 1/16 up to 3/32. And then I just put a little of the acid flux on the joint here, and I left the inner one sticking out a little bit. It wasn't really necessary probably, but heated that up with the iron, not with the gun, and enough solder wicked in there. It's rigid now, and I can chuck this in my regular drill. So anyway, soldering's handy for making some tool modifications for mechanical work and electrical work, so it's really worth having the ability to do. So I hope you'll give it a try if you haven't before.
Don?
Yes.
Quick question. If you're not splicing together the wires by either hooking them together or twisting them together, I know that they have to be in contact with each other. They have to be 10, and they have to be in contact with each other in order to get a good soldering point. How are you keeping those two together while you're doing the soldering if you're not?
Usually one or the other is already connected to something, so it's held in place, and I just hold the other piece up there. If you're doing it at the workbench, you can often rest your hand on the bench and get steadier, but that's a good question. If neither end stands still, I just throw a weight on one. I brought my bench splicer along as an example, but sometimes I just use a roll of solder or anything that's heavy enough to hold it.
Okay.
And that depends a bit on the size of the wire. But I'd really like to have people able to do hands-on, make a joint themselves. It's much more convincing when you do it and see it works. It's not magic. So we'll try to do that next time. So thank you very much, and I think we need to knock it off because my watch says it's almost noon.
Yeah. Well, nobody's knocking at the door yet, so if anybody has questions for Don, yeah, we could try to do a hands-on at the next meeting.
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Anyone else have any comments before we wrap up the meeting?